Much, Maddie. For this second portion of our event, we're going to open it up to a more public dialogue between not only our campus experts, who you just heard from, but we also have some members of our community and our partner organizations joining us today. So I'm going to call up, Jay Greenstein, who's the Chief Field and Transportation Deputy for Council District 5. Warm welcome to Jay. Andrew Thomas, who is the Executive Director of the Westwood Village Improvement Association. Welcome. Thank you. Jonathan Weiss, who is a member of the City of Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee. And Cullen McCormick, who is a student here and Director of the Bike Coalition at UCLA. Thanks. And so if both these community experts and our campus experts could come up, I'm going to start a brief moderated dialogue with them, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and dialogue with the audience. I'll have to do a little bit of mic sharing there. We've got a large group. Okay. All right. So to begin with, before we open to audience Q&A, I actually wanted to open it up to the panel themselves and see if any one of our campus experts have questions for our representatives from the city or vice versa. Anybody want to go first on that? Do we have any questions or thoughts about ways in which the city and UCLA could partner, or anything that you want to share?
Yes, I have a question for the business improvement. I mean, do you see bicycle and pedestrian as a business idea? I mean, is this something that you really considered as, you know, economic development, to kind of think about increasing the walkability and bikeability of the village?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think that, walking and then bicycle traffic, what it does as an economic driver really can't be underestimated. I used to bike as part of my commute before I had young kids, and now I'm afraid I'm in my car and on a moment's notice call. But I would go from my home in Culver City through West LA, and then up through Mar Vista and Venice into Santa Monica. And what it did was really, it shrunk my world. And as opposed to just seeing other cars on the side of the 10 or maybe other, large roads, I got to know that area. And I think if we had more people walking, more people biking, through our community and through Westwood Village and our business improvement district, people would become more familiar with the area. They'd see more businesses and more restaurants they'd like to frequent, and in turn spend more money. So I see a definite correlation between the two.
Great, thank you. Other panel.
Maybe I can add as a follow-up to that. Are there ways in which students might be able to get involved kind of in the dialogue of what and sort of where to kind of improve bicycle facilities in the Westwood area?
Yeah, absolutely. Renee and I have spoken about some ideas, and I'm really intrigued by the bike share concept and about having a hub in Westwood Village. I think it's key to bring, the 70,000 people who really serve as a daytime population on campus, to have them have more access to the business community in the Westwood Village Improvement Association and the Westwood BID. So I think that there's many opportunities where we can partner. I think bike share is important. I was actually really intrigued by the concept of lowering the speed limit, and I know that was my fear, especially after my firstborn was born. Am I going to be wiped out the next time somebody runs a stop sign? So I think that's possibly an option for our community as well, is really making it more accessible to everyone and starting to think more about how we can use our space in terms of pedestrians, in terms of bicyclists, and have cars be more of a secondary component.
Excellent. Any other conversation between the panelists before we bring the audience into this? Questions or thoughts? Okay, well, we're running a little behind, so I wanted to move more quickly to the audience participation. So the idea behind this dialogue was that it would really be a dialogue. So don't think of this as simply a question and answer, but also a forum where you can share your thoughts. I don't want it to become just a gripe session of horror stories of biking around the UCLA area. But if you do have constructive ideas to share with these members of our panel who are all in positions to really implement a lot of these solutions, we would welcome that, as well as questions. So I'll put the mic kind of here in the the hall. If you guys can come up this way, sorry, I don't think we have a walk around mic. Or you can yell.
I have a good voice.
Okay.
I really appreciate the innovative ideas that were discussed here, and I also want to give a special call out to Councilmember Katz's office when just 2 weeks ago, the city on autopilot was proposing to increase speed limits on streets that have bike lanes. When bike advocates like myself contacted Councilmember Katz, he actually stood up and opposed moving forward on that until more study is done. So thank you very much for that. But that also segues to my question, and this is broadly addressed to the panel, which is there are a number of state and federal laws or legislation that needs to be modified in order to fully achieve our goals, whether that's in terms of the 85th percentile speed limit law at the state level, whether it's in terms of changing the laws to allow the installation of triple bike racks on buses, or my favorite, as Jay knows, to get a transit line that would connect the valley to the west side so you can take some pressure off the 405 freeway, and in the long run have a lot more bike commuting capacity to UCLA. So what are your thoughts on the role of UCLA as an institution and as a community in changing legislation to accomplish these goals?
Well, the city of LA has a bicycle coordinator, actually a couple positions. The senior bicycle coordinator, Michelle Mowry, works with the mayor's office, and they carry legislation. I think the first 2 points you were talking about, the 3 racks and the 85 percentile, I'm not sure all of them, but every year they have a package. Being one of the biggest cities in the state, they are able to get a lot of things moved, not necessarily the 3-foot passing law. They're working on it again. And we do have the population to do it. Since UCLA is one of the biggest, well, is the biggest campus, I think a close relationship between Michelle and UCLA, the people I've seen here today, and I'm really excited about the programs here and working with them. I think that keeping that line of communication open is going to be really important, and just supporting what's done, like the letter that was written regarding regarding the bike plan, approving the bike plan. Bike plan was approved unanimously throughout the city, and UCLA's got to keep pushing. Everyone here needs to keep pushing. There's only so much budget to build things. There's some council districts in the valley, or one in the valley, that's putting up some obstructions to passing the bike plan. So I want it on the west side. I represent the west side, and I'd like to see it nearer universities, because I think there's more potential here than in other areas.
Thanks. Also, I know UCLA Transportation has worked closely with Metro in advocating both for the West Side Subway extension and bike facilities at our stop, and a number of other issues. I would say that in addition to our administrative staff having a close relationship with the city, what we need is a strong voice from you as well, from all of our cycling community and from the UCLA community in general. Dr. Jackson, did you have something?
When the stimulus funding came out, the Bay Area put a large portion of that into connecting the various bicycle routes in the Bay Area. And so some of the bike routes had never been connected to either schools or to the BART stations, and that was made a high priority. So the second quick thing I want to say about political leaders, having spent 25 years of my life close to this, is the political leaders always tell you there's not enough money until they're in trouble. And then there's plenty of money to fix whatever they're being pressured about.
Thanks for that. Next. How about
Well, I have a lot of comments, but I'll just pick my favorite ones right now. Yeah, sorry. So,
Say your name, please.
my name is Josh Shapiro. I'm a graduate student. I bike from Marina Del Rey almost every day. And there was a few things. Enforcement was mentioned. And I understand the need to enforce laws for bike riders as well. And stress was also mentioned on your commute. And recently I was very stressed out because I was growing up Gailey, passing the parking lot for the hospital. And I went through the red light, and I should be punished for that, but I got a $500 ticket. So I'm wondering what the potential is for making different moving violations for bicycle riders as opposed to motorists.
maybe City of LA, any thoughts on
Well,
that?
there is, I can't remember if it's Wyoming or
So, what is Idaho?
Idaho.
Yeah.
I know they're a long way away, but it's not against the law to run a red light or a stop sign. You can stop and look around. I think we all, as cyclists, we do want to set a good example, and that's part of the conflict we get, because people always say those cyclists don't follow the laws. Not a lot of people really stop at intersections. In any event, again, it's legislation that can be brought to make that change, and I do think that pattern would work in Los Angeles.
I've
I think-
gotten $175 cycling ticket as well, and sometimes it does seem like the fees that are created for motorists and the damage that could be done is a little bit different. And I know the intersection he was talking about is sort of a T. It's really an exit to a parking structure. It wasn't a full intersection, and maybe there's a way to adjust laws so that there are some exceptions for cyclists in that case. Maddie?
Yeah, is there anyone here from UCPD? Yeah, so I just want to say that's a big part of the dialogue that we're missing, and to figure out how to fold them into it. I've been pulled over on my bike too. They said that I ran the scramble, but so it's just part of this and I didn't. But it's like there's kind of unclear about, like, as a cyclist, how do you go through the scrambles, what phase, and so I think that's a big part of the dialogue that we need to fold in. I think it's common with cities to make sure that the police department is at the table.
Yeah. On that, one of the,
LAPD has Sergeant Krumer, who works with the Bike Advisory Committee. He's a really important part of it. He explains the laws. So getting the University Police Department on board would be really important.
Yeah, I want to chime in also that I think that on campus we need bicycle facilities to sort of discourage sort of logical things that one might do that are sort of in conflict with the law. Like great examples are one-way streets that sort of don't have a viable option for cyclists to go the opposite direction, wherein it's the most practical route. So sort of, it kind of, this combines sort of the whole engineering enforcement kind of, bouquet of strategies here. We want to sort of make sure that we have something sort of in terms of the physical environment that sort of facilitates not having to break the law.
yeah, and one of the biggest issues, which Madeline brought up in her presentation, is education. And I think oftentimes both cyclists and vehicle drivers are not aware of what the rules are for cyclists. And I know with the ticket I got, I had taken the lane, and I didn't know I had a right to take the lane, so I couldn't defend myself when challenged. So I know that UCLA Transportation and UCLA Recreation's Bike Shop has put together some materials that try to educate cyclists about their rights and the rules that they need to follow. And the more that we can do to educate our public, I think will help. We had another question.
Hi, my name is Ashley Henderson. I'm a graduate student here in the School of Public Health. I was wondering how you're working with the Department of Transportation regarding bus drivers. So anyone who's ever biked, the buses are very scary. They will clip you. I actually was riding my bike on Charles Young South, and a bus came very close to clipping me and had on the back the sign about 3 feet. And I just thought it was so ironic that this bus had this sign about giving people 3 feet on a bike, and yet here he was almost clipping me. So I'm curious how you're working with bus drivers to kind of enforce these new policies with them.
In our audience, we have a representative from LA Department of Transportation.
Was this a city bus or Bruin bus?
I think it was a Bruin bus because it was because it had the thing, but that's one example of a bus getting
Well-
close. I have others with city buses.
Let me address it for Bruin buses. Our drivers do go through training. They know that they're supposed to watch out for bicyclists and pedestrians. So if you ever see anything like that, I encourage you to call transit operations and let them know, because that's not how they're trained to drive the Bruin buses. They know that this is an environment with a lot of pedestrians and a lot of bicyclists, and they're supposed to watch out for both.
If someone wants to report something like that, is there any identifying tags or ways that it can be tied to the specific driver?
There are bus numbers, but if you don't get the bus number, if you say where exactly it is and the time, exact time, that we actually have a bus tracking system, and we can go back and review and figure out which bus it was.
Great.
And I
thank
would
you.
say the same for other buses within the city of LA, within our district. We've dealt with other issues. I can't say I've had a complaint like that from a bicyclist, but most of the buses are not city buses. The city of LA commuter buses are like commuter express buses you may see. Otherwise, you have Metro, which is not really within this, although the mayor and the city has several other appointees of the mayor who serve on the Metro board. We work with Metro all the time. We can do the same for Santa Monica or Culver City if we ever have issues like that, and we have in a number of instances.
Thank you.
My name's Lucino. One of the other questions I was asked sparked a thought. I was wondering for pedestrian and bicycle tickets, do the fines and penalties, does any of that go towards pedestrian and bicycle improvements? And if not, then maybe that's a good way to raise money.
I'm not sure.
Any thoughts on that topic? Anybody know the
That in
answer?
an odd way, which is that oftentimes if you tie the revenue to something, suddenly it becomes an incentive to go after the bicyclists. Just be careful.
Yeah,
All right.
one way to think about that, if Don Shoup is still here, is that we're also great that we're using UCLA parking money, but thinking about using parking money in the village to put back into bicycle and pedestrian improvements.
Hi, my name is Justin Resnick. I'm a first-year urban planning student, and one of the other questions that came up made me think about the harassment laws. And I know there was a recent harassment law passed in LA. I'm actually not familiar with it myself, but I know I've certainly had experiences riding between campus and Santa Monica, particularly on Wilshire Boulevard, where, late at night, it's actually really, really nice to ride when it's not that busy, but I have had motorists come up behind me for no reason, tailgating, honking, screaming at me. And so I'm wondering if any of the panelists are familiar with the new harassment laws and what we can do with those.
Well, I am familiar with it. I can say that no one has availed themselves of it. And I don't know how long it's been, 6-8 months it's been in place. The bike community wanted it a lot. I think Berkeley, another city just followed suit and put it in place. Maybe it's more important for the publicity. There is a really unfortunate chain of laws. I'm an attorney, I can't keep track of it, regarding, essentially you got to get hit before you really have any kind of remedy, with the police coming and stopping and following up. Many of us heard about what happened on Mandeville. That raised some awareness. So I think that it may be good for that. I don't want to dump a lot of work on Sergeant Krumer, but he is the expert on that in the city of LA. It's great that we have him. You can find the LA County Bike Coalition that has been the foremost champion behind the bike plan. The city did it, but they have a lot of information. I'm all for them and sharing information through them.
If someone is being harassed by a driver and wants to report that, if they're able to get the license plate number, what is the proper vehicle or who should they go to?
I think they call the local police department, but basically harass means you're threatened with death or bodily injury. Honking the horn, how far is it, what do they have to say? It's the same thing that I think Jay said, get the information on who they are. What happened in Mandeville was, and I'd seen because I'm in a bike club, there had been many reports about this particular car. Mm-hmm. Someone had the license, so when it came up that he was prosecuted, he had a kind of a history, and the prosecutor, because of the pressure on it, was able to use that information. Mm-hmm. So make a report. If you are in an incident, make sure that the local police department takes a report. If they don't, get in touch with the advocates. We'll find out, we'll get behind you, give you the information. Use the network, use the internet. We're here, to help, and there are a lot of people who are committed to that.
I want to add to that also. I mean, I really want to drive home the emphasis on reporting incidents, because a lot of cities will use collision data to sort of modify, certain problematic areas. And there's, perhaps some of you know, particularly bicycle and pedestrian incidents go chronically underreported. So there's oftentimes a lot of missing data, really key things that can kind of help to improve. You're laughing.
Sorry, my research assistant and I have been working on this, and we just know that they're drastically underreported.
Yeah, so anything really can add to the sort of the discussion and sort of the path to improving things, I should say.
And I would add for that as campus as well, like on UCLA campus, because I know Gino, who's there, they were looking at that, trying to find the problem areas on campus as well. So we want to hear from you guys where the tricky spots are when things are happening. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gary. I work, live, and ride my bike in Westwood. I kind of hang out a lot at the corner of LeConte and Hillgard, and I've seen a lot of things happen there. I've been standing on the sidewalk, and I've had to back up because a car was coming tumbling towards me because they had a crash in the intersection. Also, I've seen buses go down Hillgard, and because of the way the lanes are set up, the bus is only going like 10 miles an hour. But if you were a pedestrian in the street, you would have been run over by the bus. So taking everything out of the equation except for enforcement of, let's say, speed. You had the speed thing, you want to enforce the speed thing. Or if you had your choice, you'd rather put the space for the bicycle and the pedestrians. It seems to me that being hit by a car at 20 miles an hour is still unacceptable. Because I figure, you get hit by 40 miles an hour, you're dead. You get hit by 20 miles an hour, you're dead. So my question to you is, if you had a choice, would you prefer the speed enforcement or putting the space?
So sort of what are the priorities, given that we have limited resources? What does our panel think about where we should focus on first?
I would go ahead and say infrastructure, most certainly, because I mean, if you build the right infrastructure, hopefully we can sort of just engineer out a lot of these issues. But sort of, I think I'll answer your question with a question and say, can we open this up to the UCLA Police Department and get them to start enforcing traffic speeds on Hillgard and on sort of other high-speed arterials in the area? I guess they're not here today to comment on that, but I really think that would be something that we need to kind of open a dialogue, because like Maddie, I've also been pulled over by them for riding where there is no better way to get to campus in certain areas. And sort of, I would like to see them be just as judicious with all sort of road users.
Yeah, perhaps, the many organizers of this event, it might have been helpful to have a UCPD representative on the panel, but I don't want people to think that we are not being present in that official capacity means we aren't working closely with that department or including them in the broader dialogue.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say one of the things that we're launching is looking at how to slow down vehicles on campus. Because we don't have a lot of land to put dedicated bike pathways, it's a very congested campus. One of the things we want to do is slow down the traffic on the entire campus, and we have asked UCPD to come to the table to work with us on that as well.
Before that, I just wanted to mention, similarly to what Renee said, in terms of infrastructure, the challenge here in implementing the bike plan is that we live in a built-out city that surrounds the campus. And so when you're talking about adding infrastructure, the challenge is if you're adding that, where do you take it from? Do you take it from parking, which is going to impact local businesses? Are you going to be taking it from existing traffic lanes in a society that's still pretty much dominated by cars? That's going to be our challenge. And Jonathan and I have talked about. Jonathan's really, just so that people understand, he's the council member's bicycle advisory committee member for our citywide group. So when we look for input in terms of how to implement the bike plan, we look at Jonathan as our advisor on how we can help implement. So our challenge will be, and we've talked about this, some of the major corridors such as north-south, implementing the plan on major streets such as Westwood Boulevard and Sepulveda and other corridors. How are we going to make that happen? There's going to be, the council member was fully supportive of the implementation of the bike plan, but as we move forward, we're going to have a process, environmental process for implementing that. And those are going to be some of the choices: taking traffic lanes, taking parking, and there's going to be a lot of pushback from, whether it's the residential community, the business community, who are going to be very uncomfortable with having to give up to put in that infrastructure to make it safer for bicyclists. So that's going to be that tension we're going to be addressing in the next couple of years.
So my name is Eric. I'm a first-year urban planner, and I like what transportation is doing with the bike library and the new e-bikes that were donated to you. But I was wondering, if you're putting them in the undergraduate residence halls, like, what is transportation's goal in terms of like encouraging the mode share? Like, are you just taking people who would walk to campus and then putting them onto a bike? Is that really helping like GHG emissions? And then also, have you thought about maybe putting a bike library down like the Palms Mar Vista area, where a lot of UCLA graduate students live, especially like in UA South, to kind of like help them change their mode split?
I think I'll address the second one first. I think it's an interesting idea. We can talk to housing about it, since they actually run the university housing, and see whether it's something they would be interested in helping to fund. So I think it's something that obviously the residents there would have to also be interested in it, because anything that ultimately would be funded that would come out of their rents. So we'll talk to them about it. We'll see. In terms of making bikes available to undergraduate residents who live up in the residence halls, yes, you could say they could walk to everything, but you know, it's a long walk to things like Westwood, for example. So we do give them a grocery shuttle on the weekend, but it would be helpful if they also had the ability to have a bike that they could, for example, bike down to Westwood.
So again, my name is Justin Resnick, first-year planning student. Mr. Greenstein, you just mentioned one of the issues of trying to install more bike facilities being challenges with parking and travel lanes, and which we certainly recognize with surrounding community members. But you did also mention that that could be a challenge for businesses. So what I'm curious is, Mr. Thomas, your response to that, given there are some initiatives, particularly in Long Beach, regarding bicycle-friendly business districts and some of the successes they've had. So from the Westwood Village kind of business perspective, Mr. Thomas, I'm wondering what your response is to the challenge of taking away parking or motorist use in favor of bicycle use.
Well, I'll say that's, I don't know if anybody's looking forward to meeting that challenge, because I can already hear the feedback from both sides. It's very real. When we first began our organization, and we're relatively young, we've been in place about 7 months, we surveyed our stakeholders and learned that issues of parking, access, circulation, and transportation ranked very high among priorities that our stakeholders wanted us to address. So that said, I see solutions to those issues as making our area more accessible to pedestrians and to bicyclists, and reducing parking in some areas can make it, our district more friendly to those uses. So I think that's the challenge. You could look at an area like a street like Westwood Boulevard that has very high concentration of bus traffic and is not a very pedestrian-friendly street. Eliminating parking on that area, on that street, to have a bike lane. I think the issue would probably be, I'm sure Jay can comment on this too, is the merchant, right in front of that stretch of lane, how do they feel about their parking meter? Do they feel like it's integral to the success of their business? And how do you educate them to tell them that, well, if we remove this, make this area more bike friendly, perhaps instead of just that one car that might sit there, all day, or 3 cars that are there all day, you have more bikes coming through and the potential to have more business. So I think it's really about education and about really confronting these issues head on with facts. But it'll be a struggle. I don't doubt that.
My name is Rachel Cushing. I'm a graduate student in public health and urban planning, and I want to thank you all for being here. I'm glad that this discussion is starting and continuing. I'm wondering what we can do as students and as a community. I know that this is one part of a greater vision, but there are a lot of us sitting in the audience. There are probably many, many more people in class right now or who logistically couldn't be here. I'm wondering, when we leave here today, what can we look forward to? How can we build on this momentum, both on the campus in Westwood Village and also in the city of Los Angeles?
I guess I'll try and answer, and I don't know if Jonathan will have anything to add, but when we get to the point, when we go through the environmental process and some of these bike lanes, I think it's going to be important that the bicycle community is heard and represented. At the same time, while you're doing that, rather than say, hey, I'm a bicyclist and we have to make bicycles a priority over cars, I think we need to acknowledge that there are real issues in terms of concern about, capacity for vehicles and concerns for businesses for parking, and say, but I want to make sure, I take this pathway, or I know of 5 people who take this pathway, or would go this way to and from campus. There are people who feel uncomfortable about their safety, and make sure your views are represented when we come to that. There's others too, but that's the one thing that comes to mind that's going to be important in the next 5 years.
We
I-
have just a couple more questions, and then,
Just what-
unfortunately, we're gonna be out of time relatively soon, so I just wanna say, and I'll close at the end with, the raffle and some thank yous, but I just wanna make it a point that this is the beginning of a dialogue. The point of this event was not to be a standalone, let's solve biking at UCLA in 2 hours, but more the opening of a dialogue that we hope will be ongoing. Many of you signed up for an email list, and we'll let you know when there are important opportunities to give input. So we really hope that you will get in touch with and stay in touch with these experts and make your voice heard further on. So we've got one question here, one in the back, one down there, and then we're going to have a few thoughts from the Department of Transportation, and I will close things out. Dr. Jackson, do you have something?
I just want to make sure we thank Giovanna Gambisi for all the work that she, okay, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thanks to everybody for being here for this conversation. My name's Kelly Ham. I'm a librarian here on campus, and I wanted to comment about the concept of bike hubs rather than the bike lending libraries. I visited Minneapolis for a conference last year, and they had these bike hubs around the city. It was amazing how you could get from one place to another, very short hops here and there, repark your bike, go to another place, and everywhere I went, I had more than 3 feet of space. It's such a heavily used system, and everybody bikes there, even in Minneapolis, where it snowed while I was there, and there were people out on these bikes when it was snowing. And so I would encourage you, if you are thinking about this as a concept, North Campus, South Campus, the dorms, Wilshire Center, and Westwood, you know, as a start, because those would be the areas that would be used the most for those short hauls. It's just a great concept, and I think it would really help. And one last thing, the van pools, same as the buses, I'm in a van pool, I see how aggressive my driver is. There is a number on the back of the van that you can call and report if they're being too aggressive. I think that my van pool driver, we have this conversation on a weekly basis, and it's very discouraging to me to see the attitude, you know, of some of the drivers around campus. So, thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate those comments. We've got a question back here.
I had a couple comments or questions. One of them was about traffic calming. Chicago has been really, really successful in calming their traffic using basically the overall problem with the police department is there's not enough personnel to police. So they just have automated traffic cameras that snap pictures, and they have shown statistically significant decreases in people following the speed limits around school zones. And that has been really, really successful. And you know, you set up the camera, and yes, you have the initial investment of the system, but it works really, really well, and accidents in the area have gone down dramatically, both car, bike, et cetera. So that's one thing that's a possible thing to look into if traffic calming is an interest. The other thing is just a quick question for the business district. I often frequent various businesses in Westwood and, try to find bike parking, and sometimes when I can't find it, I try to request bike parking, which is normally done for a lot of the businesses I go to through LA City, where they just have a thing for you can request installation of a rack. I'd love for Westwood to have that. I know when I contacted the city of LA, they told me that I need to interface with the Westwood Council to find about adding racks, because the city of LA apparently can't do it within the business district. If you guys had a website or something where I can just type in the business address and request some racks, you know, because I like going, I know like business in general is dead during traffic, rush hour, but not for bicycles. Bicycles bring business during that time. And if you have the racks, like, you know, I go during rush hour because that's the time I like. It's slow, and I can eat, and that's what I like, so anyway.
Those remarks actually are a perfect segue. We have a guest from LA Department of Transportation. Ricardo, are you here? And he wanted to actually tell you how you can request bike racks. And then we have one final question from the audience before we wrap up. But maybe you can also talk with Andrew during the
So I guess I had better, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So like the gentleman in the back was mentioning, big part of encouraging cycling is making sure that there's parking at your destinations. And the city has two programs to kind of meet cycling parking demand. I think I had it open. It's this one up here. So basically, the first program is the U-Racks he was mentioning that you kind of see all over the city if you ride enough. And those are very easy and quick to install. Basically, like he was mentioning.
Maybe you can just project on that thing, or okay.
Oh, basically, what he was mentioning is there's a form on the website. If you just go to Google and search LA bike rack requests, you'll get to that form. And the requirements are basically the rack needs to be in front of a business. The sidewalk needs to be at least 7 feet. We don't want to interfere with pedestrians. And it has to be in the city of LA. So if you request a rack, usually our queue right now is about a month. So within a month, that rack will be there if it meets some of those guidelines. As he was mentioning, in a business improvement district, we don't want to infringe on their plans, their specific plan for the area. But we'd be happy if they were okay with us installing racks. We could have 30, 40 racks here next month. Like we have a guy, he'll come out, he'll mark the locations. You know, you guys can go on, suggest the locations you think. And there could be racks here like within like a month or two. Yeah, so this is the request form. The other program we have, I think this would be great in a place like Westwood Village, is the Bicycle Corral. This here is in front of a cafe in Highland Park, right next to Occidental College, another place with a lot of cyclists. And what's great about this is that's a space where there was one car before. Usually a car, you'll have 1 or 2 customers. This can accommodate 10 customers. They can even be designed to accommodate up to 12 bikes. So that's 12 customers instead of 1 or 2 customers. And I encourage the business district or owners in the Westwood Village to contact the owner of this cafe. It's called Cafe de Leche. He'll tell you how successful the program's been. He's been a real strong advocate of it. He's been doing so well that he actually opened up a sandwich shop like down the block in the last few months. So this has really been helping out his business. And basically, if you want any more information, you can go to our website, bicyclela.org, and there's also a bike blog that has kind of more up-to-date information on bike lanes and other things that are going on in the city. Thanks.
Thanks very much. We had one last question from the audience, and then I'm going to wrap us up.
Hi, Eric Griswold, community member. That's just like you saw in that picture just now, because I was talking with the owner of the Bullet cargo bike company last night. He's in Denmark. He told me he had just shipped 60 bicycles to a dealer in Portland. Are you guys going to accommodate in all these plans cargo bikes? Also maybe having a cargo bike or 2 to lend to people so that they can use it to move things. There's a lot of people who jump in their car because, well, I can't carry this on my bike, and maybe they could.
Anybody have an answer for that? Cargo bikes.
I know where to buy them.
Yeah, I wanted to toss out an idea that occurred to me while I was sitting up here was, and I don't know how feasible this is, but I'm looking forward to the Cyclovia that's coming up in April, and I don't know if there's a chance to actually connect it all the way to UCLA and include UCLA in a Cyclovia.
We keep trying to get, Joe Linton, who's on the Bicycle Advisory Committee, is the one who runs that. And we've been trying to get it to the west side, and they're more interested in extending it to other areas. There are a lot of people who want it here.
I think that idea of just
But
creating...
UCLA could create one.
Right, that's what I was just thinking.
And the Business Improvement District, you're all here, so.
Right.
Or perhaps doing, the BID might be able to consider doing something even just within Westwood Village, even if it was smaller, having a 1 day a week where it's shut down to one of the streets, Broxton maybe, shut down to traffic like you do with the farmers market, but have it be for pedestrians and cyclists.
Right, and include the campus.
Yeah, definitely a lot of really great ideas. I appreciate you all being here. I wanted to call up Giovanna and Basie, although you're busy taking pictures, and Rachel as well. If you guys can come up for a second. They both had very active roles in helping organize this event, especially Giovanna was managing many of the logistics. It's not easy getting a big event like this together with all the speakers and the whole shebang. We had donations from Whole Foods, and Recreation helped us get the coconut water as well. So there were a lot of different players. So can we give a big round of applause to Giovanna?